Thank Hashem that we're able to learn. It's chassav our learning. We should have Beis Hamikdash and Shbir for Shleima. Michael Nassim ben Sarah, Aaron David Alevi ben Menuchat Lester, Avram Rafal ben Sarah, Asher Anshel ben Miriam Halevi ben Miriam Madel and Sarah Basnuni. Okay, we're starting today. Yud Amid Aleph, right on the top. Yesterday's daf. A hediyat tefer kedarke. A hediyat means someone that's not a professional. So he could do sewing. He could sew on Chol Hamoed. You can't use a tailor on Chol Hamoed, but if you need to sew something up, someone that's not a professional can do a few stitches. Hechidami hediyat. What's an example of what would be considered a non-professional sewing? Amri debei Rabbi Yanai, it was said in the yeshiva of Rabbi Yanai, Kol shein yachol lahotzi malay machat bevasachas. There's different ways of learning this, but one of the ways is that you would make a bunch of stitches and then you would pull the thread through the whole thing. That was professional. Someone that's not professional has to pull the thread tight by every stitch. It would take much longer. The professional could go in and out, and then at the end they pull the whole thing tight, and it's perfect. So Rabbi Yanai is telling us the manner in which it's done. Rabbi Yossi bar B'chanina amar kol shein yachol lachaven imra b'chefes chalukei. Rabbi Yossi bar B'chanina says the outcome. If you can't get the hem straight, and they would add a piece of material, I think, to the hem. So then that's considered a non-professional. So there's the two parts to this. There's the manner in which it's done, and then the outcome has to look not professional also. Or each one, there's two opinions here. Each one's telling me a different side of it. If there is a professional, so what's it his fault that he's a professional? He has to do the stitches on Chol Hamoed in a way that's not professional. So it says he should be machlev. My machlev, what is machlev? Sounds like a dog, right? Rabbi Yochanan amar mafsia. Yochanan says he makes stitches that are distant one from the other, just like the dog's teeth are distant one from the other. I don't know if that's how it is. Maybe it means like those big teeth in the front, the fangs. Rabba bar Shmuel amar shine kalbasa. It's actually, you make stitches uneven, one big, one small, just like a dog's teeth. They have big teeth and small teeth. All right. So that's what the Uman has to do in order to make the stitches on Chol Hamoed. Misargen esamites. We had a machlekes if you're allowed to do this. The Mishnah said, Misargen esamites, Rabbi Yossi Omer mematchen. That you're not allowed to be misargen, you're only allowed to be mematchen. Misargen means to weave, to put on a strap. My misargen.
The teeth of the dog are not straight. They were good orthodontist.
Right.
No braces needed.
Is that a business? Orthodontist for dogs? No.
That's why.
My misargen. What does it mean to weave? My mematchen. What does it mean to stretch? The machlekes, Rabbi Yossi and the Tanakama. Rabbi Yossi doesn't allow the weaving. See, the way they would make beds was that a wooden frame, and then they would take rope and go back and forth, and then they would put the rope the other way, and that's what they would put whatever they wanted, cushions or whatever to sleep on. So you have the frame already, but what about the weaving? So Kiyasa Rabdimi Amar, when Rabdimi came, Rabdimi was a traveler, so he comes from Eretz Yisrael, he comes to Bavel, and he tells us that Pligi bar Rabchia bar Abba and Rabasi, the two students of Rabbi Yochanan. And they said it in the name of Chizki and Rabbi Yochanan. What is this machlekes? Chadam or Mesargin. One of them said, we don't know, Reb Chia bar Abba, Rabasi. One said that Mesargin means Shesi ve'erev. That means both ways. Shesi was on the loom, the warp that was attached to the loom, and then the weft that would go under and over. So that's what the first opinion holds that you're actually allowed to do. And Rabbi Yossi argues. Rabbi Yossi says, no, you're only allowed to do mematchen. What's mematchen? That's to stretch. That's shesi b'lo yerev. That's only to put on the shesi, but you're not allowed to put on the erev. Why? You're not allowed to weave. Weaving is one of the 39 malachas. You're not allowed to weave on, but you're allowed to set up the shesi, the warp.
I don't know what the malacha has to do with Chol Moed though. Felt like some malachas were okay as long as it wasn't like a substantial loss.
Yeah. So because the baseline is that the 39 malachas are prohibited.
Mm-hmm.
And then the question is, is there a loss, or is it for the Moed, or is it? Because you're not allowed to plow your field and tan the leather unless it's going to be a loss. That's one opinion. Chadam mesargin shesi b'lo yerev mematchen is shema yerafi mematchen. This is one step down. Mesargin, according to the first opinion, was warp and weft. Mesargin, according to the second opinion, is just the warp. So mematchen, according to the first opinion, was just the warp. So what's mematchen, according to the second opinion, one step down, is that you're allowed to pull it tighter. Yeah.
So like, for instance, can you like go on a flight and see family like on Chol Moed? Because you'd be driving to airports, whatever.
Yeah. So you're allowed to, on Yom Tov in general, you're allowed to cook. You're allowed to make fires.
Right.
So you'd be allowed to turn on lights. We don't make a new fire, but turning on lights we do, because that's and then cooking, of course, we do that. We even do on Yom Tov. Then they had like the things like people who had chumras about not taking pictures and Chol Moed, which was very common. Everyone takes pictures on Chol Moed. And then some other people said, no, that's a loss. You have events that you're not going to be able to catch later. So these
like,
things come up.
Traveling to see family or something.
Yeah.
Like that. There's no loss incurred there.
Right. We had the Gemara, so it's clear that you're allowed to. Rabbi Eliezer was the opinion that you had to stay home on Sukkot. Remember, in Sukkot. He was upset with someone that came to see him. So what are you doing? It's the holiday. You're supposed to stay home. Okay. Yeah. He felt that you were supposed to stay. You weren't supposed to go from Sukkot to Sukkot. So, Aini, we have a problem. Is this really so? But Tani Rav Tachlifa Barshal, Rav Tachlifa Barshal has a brisa, and he said, "V'shavin." Everyone agrees. You can't braid the ropes of the bed. You can't twist it into a rope. Now, what's the problem? Let's see. So, Bishleima, it's going to take a few lines to get to the problem over here. Bishleima Lamandamir Masargin Shesi Ve'erev and Mematchen Shesi B'lo Yerev. Let's say we follow the first opinion. That the first Tana held that you're allowed to be Masargi, allowed to set up the bed with a warp and weft. The rope goes both directions. And Mematchen meant that you're only allowed to do one direction, just the warp. Hainu Diktani Rav Tachlifa Barshal, and then Rav Tachlifa Barshal tells us, but you can't make the ropes. It's only after the ropes are made, then one opinion says you can put it on, another opinion says you can put it on halfway. But if the Mesargin, which is the lenient opinion, says that you're only allowed to put on the warp, but not the weft. So mematchen, and mematchen is one down, says Shema Yarafi Mematchai, says that you're only allowed to pull it tight. So hashta, if everyone holds that you can't put on both, shesi ve'erev amrit loy, when it comes to the warp and weft, both directions of the rope, no one holds that you're allowed to. So why does it have to tell me that you can't make the rope? Of course you can't make the rope. You can't even put on the you can't even put the rope on fully. Where's this kasha? It's a good question. It's a question on the second opinion, the Tani Rav Tachlifa. Amalei Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak le Rav Chia bar Ravin. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak asks Rav Chia bar Ravin the following question: does anyone really hold that Mesargin, that means the first opinion, which was the more lenient opinion, said that you're allowed to weave the bed, holds that it's only one weave, it's only the shesi, only the warp, not the weft. Does anyone really hold that? But which was the second, it's a second question on what we just learned. Well, Tanan, but we have a Mishnah that says Reb Meir Reimer Hamita Mishiyisrik Bashlei Shabbatim. Talking about if a bed becomes tamei. As a bed, the frame is just pieces of wood. Wood doesn't become tamei unless it's a receptacle. But when it's turned into a bed, then it becomes a keli, then it does become tamei. But at what point is it a bed? Because you have ropes that have to go back and forth. How much of the rope needs to be there? So it says when you weave 3 houses. Now, 3 houses means like 3 boxes. Now, it's only considered a box after you have the warp on, and then you do the weft. That's when it would be considered a box, to 3 squares. So, we're seeing that misarig means shesi ve'erev, mishi yisrig. Misarig means the both ways, the warp and the weft. That's what we see from that Mishnah. Because Rav Meir says mishi yisrig. So it's a question on the second opinion that said misarig meant that you just take it in one direction. So when Ravin came, see, this is a common approach in the Gemara that Rav Dimi brings something from Eretz Yisrael, and then Ravin comes and corrects it. There was no discussion about Misargin. Misargin, everyone holds that it's both the warp and the weft. The whole machlekes was only by the stretching it. Rabbi Yossi's opinion, what Rabbi Yossi allowed. In other words, the Tanakama's opinion, we know that you're allowed to do both warp and weft on the bed. Question is, what does Rabbi Yossi hold? One holds that mematchen, to stretch it, meant that you're allowed to take it in one direction, just put on the warp. That means the initial, like guitar strings, just goes one direction.
Right.
And Mar Savar Shema Yarafi Mematche. Another one holds that you're not even allowed to do that. You're only allowed to pull it tighter if it was already on. Meisvei, the Gemara is a question. Sargin Asamita. You're allowed to weave the bed. The mayor holds that for sure you're allowed to be mamateach. I'm not sure what that is. Let's see. Rabbi Yossi says that you're allowed to be mamateach, but you're not allowed to do masarg. That's what we had in the Mishnah also. We just didn't know what it meant. We've been discussing what it means. Now this is what we're introducing. There's another opinion that says that you're not allowed to be mamateach. No, we have different ways of explaining what this means. But if you say that mematchen means that you put on the warp, so some hold that that's not allowed. That's considered the beginning of weaving, and you're not allowed to do that. according to the opinion that says that if it's loose, you're allowed to pull it tighter. Now we have a Yeshayim. The Yeshayim hold that you're not allowed to do that either. Gemara's a little surprised. Why can you not pull it tighter? What's the problem of pulling something tighter? Stretch it a little bit. Which malacha is that? So the Gemara says, you're right. It is a malacha. Because you can get away without doing this. What do? You fill it up with clothing instead of pulling it tight. It's like sagging. So you can put clothing there, either underneath it or on top, just to make it flat. And then you don't really have to go to the sides and start pulling it tight. There's another thing to do. So therefore, if there's another thing to do, so this would be considered asur on Yom Tov. Okay. Now we have a Mishnah. Mamidin Taner v'kirayim v'reichayim b'mayed. You're allowed to set up an oven. A tanner is an oven that has a stove of one top, one. There's a Rashi, a very strange Rashi, where the Bach adjusts it, but without the Bach, the Rashi contradicts all the Gemaras. Kirayim is a stove that has two pots, two holes for the right. And then the Reichayim is a mill. You're allowed to set up this two types of stoves or a mill on Cholamayit. You're allowed to cook. So yeah. Is it a barbecue? Yeah. This is not the barbecue. This is setting up a barbecue. This is setting up the. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer ein mechabshin aser rechaim betchila. Rabbi Yehuda says you're not allowed to press the mill initially. You have to see what that means. My mechabshin. The Gemara asks straight away, what does it mean to press? Mechabshin says like pickle.
It says chisel.
Chisel. Okay, we'll see. The word is usually to press. We'll see what it means. We'll see what it means. I'm just saying the Hebrew word comes from like pickling. Rabbi Yehuda says, this is Rabbi Yehuda, the Amira. Rabbi Yehuda Bar Yecheskel is a student of Rav, student of Shmuel. He says what it means is menaka rechaya. What happens is the millstones, they get rubbed out. They're supposed to have grooves on them so that when they rub against each other, so menaka would be, you clean it out. Actually, you make holes. Yeah.
Doesn't show the grooves.
Because the grooves are on the inside. It's not showing you the inside. Rabbi Chiel Amar Bas Eina. Rabbi Chiel, it's interesting. We don't have Rabbi Chiel often. Rabbi Chiel says it's the eye that either the flour pours out from, would be a hole in the bottom stone that would let the flour fall through, or it's a hole in the top stone that you put the flour in. So either one. But whatever the case is, you're allowed to make that hole. I'm sorry, Rabbi Yehuda, you're not allowed to make that hole. Ein mechav, you're not allowed to make that hole. It says, Meisvei, we have a question. Ma'midim tana v'reichayim b'mayed v'lvad shel yigmar malachtan. Div Rabbi Lezer. It says you're allowed to set it up, but you're not allowed to do the gemar malacha. Doesn't say what the gemar malacha is. Chacham ma'af yigmar. Chacham say you're allowed to finish it as well. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer Mishmai, Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer is Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkenes. He's the teacher of Rabbi Akiva, student of Rabbi Yechim ben Zakkai, right? Ma'amidin es hachadasha. He says that you're allowed to set up a new oven, a new mill. right? And you're allowed to press or chisel an old one. But there are those that say that you're not allowed to press even an old one or chisel an old one. Now, Bishleim Alamandam, we have the same sort of question that we asked on the previous Gemara. We're unclear what a certain word means. We have two opinions. We quote a brisa that adds a third opinion, that adds not a third opinion of what it means, but adds another opinion to the Mishnah. And then we challenge the translation based on another opinion. It says, if you say mechabshin means that you have to make the grooves, we understand why we said that an old mill, you're allowed to make the grooves. You're allowed to do this. But if it means to make the eye, the hole in the millstone, Yishena baseina lamala. Why would an old millstone need a new eye? How did you use it the first time? You have to get the flour in and get the flour out. If it gets rubbed out, I can understand how the grooves get rubbed out. But you can't use it without and the hole doesn't get rubbed out. My answer is going to Kaboila Arbacha Tzvei Porta. They wanted to make it a little bit wider. So that could be something that the question was, were you allowed to do that on Yom Tov? Rav Huna, on Cholamayid, right? On Cholamayid, thank you. Rav Huna, Shamilu Gavra de Kabanaka Rechaya B'Chel D'Mayid. Rav Huna, he hears about this person that is doing this to his millstone. He's making the grooves on the stone, on Cholamayid. Amar Man Hai, who is this person? Atchel Gufa de Kamachel Cholodamayid. His body should have holes because he's making holes on Cholamayid. I'm sorry?
It sounds like a lot of menakers.
Right here. Yeah, probably traditionally menaker is probably they would do nikur, to take out the gedanasha. Probably that's where the name would come from. A menaker is someone that like a traber is to cut the meat. They would take out that's a menaker. Here it means to make grooves in the stone.
Groovy.
The issue that's being discussed, you're still on tircha.
It's a mix of tircha and malacha, yeah.
Because before it was tircha versus the hefset.
Yeah.
And here we're talking about building, creating something that's going to last way beyond.
Right.
Away. So it's tircha versus, I don't know, something.
Yeah.
Making opportunity.
No, it's tircha versus necessity on Cholamayid. What you're doing this because you want to grind the flour for Yom Tov. Question is, if you're allowed to go through this process because this is too much of an effort. Yeah. Okay. So the Gemara explains that Savalaki Yeshayimrim. Rav Huna must hold like the Yeshayimrim because the Yeshayimrim said that you weren't allowed to do the nikur. Why was this an old one? Maybe he holds like Rabbi Yehuda. No, because Rabbi Yehuda says Machabshin Nesa Yeshana in the Brisa. In the Brisa, Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rabbi Lezer that you are allowed to do to fix up an old one, and it was only the Yeshayimrim that said you weren't allowed to. So that's why the Gemara is saying that Rav Huna held that this was prohibited, and he was following the Yeshayimrim. Darash Rab Chama Neikrin Rechayim b'Mayit. You're allowed to make these grooves in the millstone on Cholamayid. Mishum Rab Meir Amar Afilu Sus Shereichav Alav. Because probably mutter. Lital tzipanaim b'chol shamayim. Yeah, I didn't know this was even an issue, but that's because I don't have horses or donkeys. Reb Meir says that you're allowed to cut the nails of a horse or donkey, so it should. Yeah.
The whole thing is a nail. Hammer and push.
No, that's
Oh.
a hoof, no?
So
Yeah.
Give them the force.
so
Trim the hooves, it says.
Taisvus on the bottom. Taisvus says a horse. It says a horse that he's riding on. Taisvus says pirish b'taisvus.
Can you have your animals also?
That he says you're only allowed to ride it if you need to. You're not allowed to just ride a horse.
So we can apply that.
What about pony rides?
Traveling too?
Yeah.
Like all those fun things. So you're allowed to cut the nails. Aval, return the page. Chamra derechaya. Chamra over here means donkey, not wine. But the donkey of the mill, they could get who would turn the mill? I mean, they could turn it by hand, but they would either have donkeys attached to it and they would walk in a circle, and or they would have water, then it would turn it with the water mill or wind. So the donkey by the millstone, you weren't allowed to cut the nails because you can get it to turn, you can get it to walk that short distance without fixing up the nails. Rav Yehuda Shari Lemishkal Tufrei Lachamr Derechaya. Rav Yehuda actually allowed the cutting the nails of the donkey, even of the donkey of the millstone. Ulu Ukmei Rechaya. He allowed to set up the millstone, one stone on top of another. Lemivnei Rechaya, to build, I guess, a frame for it. Lemivnei Amas Rechaya, and this is also a frame. Or it's to the water that would go to turn the stone. Amas could also mean the water. Rashi doesn't learn like that. Rashi's learning that there's a block of wood that the stone was put on. Lemivnei Uriah, you could build a pen, a stable. Pen. Rava or Rav Shara Lesruke Susya. Rava or Rav, there's two versions over here, allows to groom the horse. To Sruke means to comb it with an iron comb. Lemivnei Akrapita. Yeah, in the gesture, I looked it up. Akrapita was a raised seat, like a cushion seat. Rashi, well, it's actually not Rashi, it's Ben Gershon. Says it's something like some sort of trough. Menaitura, it says in French, or maybe if it's Rabbeinu Gershon, it's in German, right? Lemivnei Yitztabot, you're allowed to build a frame of that's made out of a platform made out of stone. Rava Shara Lemishkal Dama Lebehema. That's why if the first one would be Rav, this would be Rava. Rava Shara Lemishkal Dama Lebehema B'chol Damayit. Rava says he allowed them to do bloodletting on an animal. Amalei Abaya Tanya de Messiah. Abaya tells to Rava, I have a support for you. It says Mekizan Dam Lebehema. You're allowed to do bloodletting. And you don't refrain from any sort of medicine for an animal on Cholamayit. Yeah. If you don't have an animal, you don't really think about this. But when you have an animal, when they get older, there's a lot of concerns. They have to give shots to the friend who is to give his dog a shot every day. And this medicine and that medicine, it becomes like a whole thing. So it comes Yom Tov, he has all these shilas.
Bloodletting is a cure.
Yeah, it used to be a cure, yeah.
Did we say that your animals also have to refrain from tircha also, or because that wasn't part of plowing?
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah, the animals weren't supposed to work.
Oh.
So Rava, this friend of mine had a shaila about measuring. He had to measure how much he put into the shot for the dog. It was a shaila, but I think it was allowed. Rava shara l'ksuse kirme. Rava allows laundering very thin clothing. Dakin kikrum beya, what that would be. Thin clothing, maybe like nylons. That's what it
Can I
sounds like.
ask you a question about the animal? If it's on Shabbos, you can break Shabbos to save a life. You can do that for an animal. If your pet dog has a stepdaughter has a rabbit, if they get sick on Shabbos, could she take it to the hospital?
I don't think you can do any biblical prohibition. Should mean getting in a car. Not getting in a car. Getting in the car is not biblical. Driving a car. I don't think you can do any of that. The question is, like, as you go down, what type of malachas you can do for tzar balachayim, for animals' life. I'm not sure. Okay. My timer. What's the reason why Rava allowed this type of laundry? Because Maisa had you to. It's not a professional laundry. I guess you put it in water and you just let it hang, whatever. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Barami, Amar Rav Chisda Kiturei Beiri or Beyadi is what it says on the side. Aser. Rav Chisda says, Rabbi Yitzchak Barami says, name of Rav Chisda, that to sew sleeves onto a garment. Yeah. Kiturei is to make a knot. There's another translation of kiturei, which means like katiris. You put incense, and that would also do something. This Rabbeinu Gershon says that they would make pleats into the sleeve. That's usher. My time and my seumanu, because that's a professional work. Amarava. Man de maskil ara. Yeah, the way to read maskil is if you read it with a samach, it's better. Maskil means to remove the stones from the ground. Adaita de beidari. If you're trying to make a threshing floor, which is probably that you needed it flat, then it would be mutter. Adaita de ara. But if you're doing it because you want the ground for planting and for plowing, so that's also you're not allowed to do that on Cholamite. Hey Chidami, how can you tell what he's doing it for? And what's mulya b'mulya? If he takes dirt from one mound and he puts it on another mound, benatza benatza, he takes from a furrow and he puts it into a furrow, then daita de beidari shakel. Then he's not trying to make the ground flat. He's doing it just for threshing floors. He doesn't care where the dirt goes. He just needs this area that he has to be good. Mulya, if he takes from a mound, v'shad benatz, and he puts that into a furrow, then adaita dara, then he's obviously preparing the ground. Yeah, I'm reading it not like Rabbeinu Gershon, who has a different gersa. He says that if you take from a mound and put it on a mound, then you're doing it for the ground. And if you take from a furrow and put it in another furrow, that's also for the ground. That you don't care where it goes when you're about to plow anyway. Yeah. It's a two pshatim here, which is going to get you into trouble if you try to do this on Cholamite, because whichever way you do it, it's a problem, according to the other opinion. Amarava, hi man, what do you do for the garden on Cholamite? Are you allowed to water the garden? You're allowed to put on a sprinkler? I don't know.
Your plants will die.
If they're gonna die, then it would be allowed. But let's say they're not.
So no.
Just for extra. Amarava, Haimanda Pasach Maya La'ara, Adaita the Kivri Shari, Adaita Dara Aser. This is very interesting. He lets the water channel go through his yard. If it's in order to catch the fish, then that's permissible. But if it's to water his ground, then it's prohibited. Hechidami. How do you tell which is which? So Pasach Trei Bavi. If he opens two entrances, two doors, so that the water should just go straight through. So then Adaita the Kibri, then he's doing that for the fish. because he wants the water to go straight through, and he's just gonna catch the fish as they go by. Puts a net there. Plus, chad if he opens one door, then if he opens just the entrance, really what he's doing is just flooding his field. So adaita da'ara, then that's just for his field. He just wants the water to overflow and to get to the rest of the field. Rava. Rava says, Haiman de pashach dikla. Someone that prunes a palm tree. I didn't know that palm trees can get pruned, but it probably means he's cutting off the extra branches, not the top of it. That would ruin it. Adaita de chivyasa. If he's doing it to feed his animals, he wants to feed them with whatever. It doesn't sound like he's getting dates now, but so then that's permissible. Adaita de dikla, but if it's to improve the tree, then that's aser. Hechidami, how can you tell this? How can you tell? So shakal kula mechad gisa. Maybe he's taking schach. If he takes it all off one side, then it's adaita de chivyasa. Then that's for the animal food, or for the schach. Mehai gisa adaita de dikla. If you're taking from all the sides equally, then that's because you're trying to improve the tree.
Right.
So you're making the tree nicer, not what you need off the tree. But Amarava, Hani Tamri Tuchlani, these unripe dates. Migzerino Shari. Migzerino sounds like to cut them, but it means to cut them in half. You're going to eat them. One second. Yeah, you're gonna eat them cut in half. That's allowed. But but if you want to press them, you press the juice out of that, so they'll be able to dry and they won't get spoiled or they won't get worms. Vinegar adds in. That's also why, because it's not going to be ready for cholamayid. You're allowed to do work on cholamayid that you're going to need for the Yom Tov or for cholamayid, but not just for later. Rav Papa Markivan de Mitlai Kiparkamatya Ha'aved Dami V'Shari. Rav Papa says no. You have these dates. If you don't preserve them, they're going to go bad, and that's a loss. So you're allowed to do that, even though it's not going to be ready now. But you don't have to give yourself a loss. The Amarava. Rava says Parkamatya Kol Shuaser. You're not allowed to do any commerce on cholamayid.
Right.
You can't do any business. Probably if you have a store, you're allowed to open your store for people to buy what they need for Yom Tov or whatever. But
Right.
other types of business.
The commodities traders that trade every hour, every minute counts. They stay on it.
If it would be a loss,
Yeah, for sure.
we have to see.
Thing.
Amar Rabbi Yossi bar Ravin Abdava Avid Mutter. Rabbi Yossi bar Ravin says if it's a loss, then it's allowed. Ravina Havaleyahu Iska Davim Misdavin Beshita Alfi. Ravina had this business, these items, merchandise, that he could sell it for 6,000 something, 6,000 zuz maybe. I don't know. Shah lizavune basar chala demayada. So he decided he's not going to sell it on chalamayid, so he waited. The Zavni betracer alfi, he sold it for 12,000.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, focus or
Yeah.
focus.
I only give you the good case. What about the other cases? Goes from 6 to 3.
Yeah. Ravina have a masik zuzi, the bnei akra de shenuasa. He lent money to these people of Akra the Shinusa. Asala Kami de Ravashi comes to Ravashi. Amli Mal the Mazel Idna Alayo. He asked Ravashi, can I go get the money? Amalei, Ravashi says, given the Idna who the Mishkachaslu, B'yem Achrine, Lai Mishkachaslu, you're not going to catch them another day. They're going to be running around and busy and whatever, but on Cholamayit, they're going to be home. Just didn't go to the parks. So this is like a loss unless you go now. So it's a lot. You're allowed to go collect the money on Cholamayit.
Wow.
Tanya Nami Gabi Avodah Zara. We have a similar thing regarding doing business with a non-Jew. Ki Gavna. Similarly, Tanya Nami Gabi Ki Gavna. Similarly, Holchem Yurid Shalakim. You're allowed to go to a fair of idolaters. They have make a fair, and it turns out that they've made the fair on their holiday. So you officially you're not supposed to do business with a non-Jew on his holiday because he's going to go praise his idol.
This is on
Well, we're using an example of what's considered a loss. We said collecting the debt was considered a loss because that's the only time you can collect it on Cholamayit. So now we're going to say similarly on the days that are on the non-Jewish holiday, there's also things that are a loss you're allowed to do. So it says over there that leichin behema avadim, you're allowed to buy animals and slaves, or shvachis and maidservants, batim v'sadis akramim, houses, fields, and vineyards. V'kaisev v'malaber kaishalem, you're allowed to go to the court to make sure that the documents are verified, and because it's like you're saving it from them. You're getting this business, which is you won't get another deal like this. Rav Shara L'Chia Barashi. Rav allows Chia Barashi L'Migdal Oyarei B'Chela D'Mayed. Oyarei is either the Rabbinic Gershon says it's fishnets. There's another pshat I saw that it's there's a type of another type of net, but it was a large net or a small net. There was going to be a difference here. My time, what's the reason? My sehedyitu. It's my sehedyit. It's not a professional craft to make a fish net. It's just a bunch of knots. You tie everything into a knot, and then you have it all. Aval isli aser, but to make a bird net, that's going to be aser. My timer, what's the reason? My seumanhu. That's already professional to make a bird net. That's the way Rabbeinu Gershon puts it. A net to catch birds. Rav Yehuda Shari la'ami tanura. Rav Yehuda allows the fellow by the name of Ami Tanura. His name was Ami. And under the Hebrew name, Ami is spelled with an ayin. This is an Aramaic name. And what would he do? He built ovens. So his name was an oven, Ami Tanura. Lemigdal Tanuri. He allowed him to build ovens on Cholamayit. Before we said that you weren't allowed to complete an oven, right? Rav Yehuda, I'm sorry, le Rabba Barispi le Migdal Maholta. He also allowed Rabba Barispi to make a sifter. Apparently, that's what he did. He would sift flour. Eini vatani Rabba Barshmol v'shavan shen goydlin tana lechatchila. But everyone holds that you can't. Goydlin is an interesting word for a tana. You can't. Goydlin is usually like to braid. Yeah.
No, this is good like Magado Tinokas. You're starting from scratch.
Yeah, I hear. Maybe. That he allowed him to, but there's a problem because we have a Bryce that says everyone agrees that you're not allowed to do this. It says like Kasha, it depends what the season was. In the season of in the winter. So it was a big tircha to get it to harden. You needed the clay to harden, so you had to heat it up very hot. To in the summer, you didn't have to do it because it would harden from the sun itself. So the difference is if it was in the winter or in the summer, if it's allowed or not.
These ovens for.
There's only two Yom Tovs. It's either Pesach or
So
Sukkot.
is for making food or for heat?
They're for food. For food. Yeah. Yeah. So on Sukkot, you weren't allowed to, but on Pesach you were allowed to.
I can't get my grill going after.
Oh, calm down, relax, sir.
I'm just saying.
Relax.
Go outside and then soak and wet sometimes I can't.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Here you know.
I hear sometimes people make barbecues on Yom Tov. If you have a charcoal grill, big deal. What do? You light it and it goes out when it goes out. If you have a gas grill, you can't turn it off because you're not allowed to put out the fire. So you would have to do it like towards the end of Yom Tov. Otherwise you lose all your. No, on Chol Hamoed for sure you can, because Chol Hamoed you can. But on Yom Tov, I've heard people like I think even here one time they had like on Simchas Torah they made a barbecue. Okay. Eisen Michael Agag, you're allowed to make a fence for a roof, or a merpeset, and for a porch or a balcony. Maisa Hedyet, but only a Maisa Hedyet. Doesn't sound safe. Avaloi Maisa Uma, but you can't do a professional one. Shafin es Sadakin, you're allowed to plaster the cracks. Magila Naisan, the Magila Biyad Regel. Magilin is like a roller that they would roll over the ground to fill in the cracks. But you're allowed to do it not with a regular one, just with your hand or foot. But not with a big roller. Yeah, that's more professional. Hatzir, v'hatzinar, v'hakeira, v'aminal, v'mafteach. These are a bunch of parts of the door. The tzir is the hinge, and the tzinar is what the hinge goes into, and v'hakeira is the beam on the top. The minal is the lock, and the maftech is the key. All of these shenishbru, any of those that broke, misaknim b'mayid. You're allowed to fix them on Chol Hamoed. You don't want people breaking into coming into the house. That's a loss. But you're not allowed to delay all of these things for Chol Hamoed. You say, yeah, I'll fix it then. I'm going to have some free time. Push it off to Chol Hamoed. But kol kvasim sounds like pickles. Anything that you could pickle or brine, it's like fish brine. Pickle and salt or in brine, anything that you'll be able to eat on Chol Hamoed. So you're allowed to do. Or on Yom Tov. How long does it take to make pickles? 3 days? Yeah.
He's from the Bronx.
Oh, come on.
It takes as long as it takes
To get to the store. Yeah.
The subway slow, it takes longer.
Takes 3 days, right?
I worked in a pickle factory in Israel.
Whoa.
I do. I'm not so successful at it. So I don't really know like the.
That's
I worked in a pickle factory in Israel.
Yeah.
And the people had said they had two kinds. One you add a chemical and you do it one day.
Oh wow!
And the other one was a long process.
And it took 3 days, the long one, or.
And worked there one day. So
Uh-huh.
they said that takes a little longer. That whole area over there, that's old-fashioned pickles, the chemical made pickles.
Now, did you have to press them into the? Was there a lot of pressing? Because the word means to press. I know that you have to push them into the jar. They shouldn't float up, or else if they float up, they get.
There were the large pickles, you could only put so many in a can. doing little pickles, you put more in the can.
You didn't have to press them to
More
hold
until
tight.
you squeeze.
Yeah. Okay. Heichidami Maisa Hedyet. What is considered Maisa Hedyet over here? We're talking about making a fence for a porch. So Rav Yosef Amar B'chutza V'Dafna B'Masnisatana Tsar B'Tzrar V'Natach B'Tit. This is Mamish the Gemara we had before. Rav Yosef says that you put on Hutza, palm branches. Dafna is like bay leaves. And the Brisa says that you can put gravel, but you can't put it the cement in. Sapanes Sadakin, you're allowed to fill in the cracks, Magil Nice Magela, and you could roll it over. Hashtam Magela Amrit Shari Biad V'Regel Mibai. If it says you're allowed to use the roller, then of course you can use your foot or your hand. So it's Hachikamar. That's not what it meant. It meant Sapanes Sadakin Magil Nice and Ken Magela Biad V'Regel. Similar to a Magela. Magela is a roller. You're allowed to do similar to the roller with your hand and foot, but you weren't allowed to actually use the roller. So why does it say you can't use this heavy roller? Maybe that's what it means. But that's what you're not allowed to use. Okay.
This was connected to food.
This was no. This is talking about the apparently in an oven, fixing the cracks in an oven. The Gemara now says, Hatzir v'atzina v'akir v'aminal v'maftech shnesh mesakim b'mayit. All of these parts of the lock and the door, you're allowed to fix. On Cholamayit. The Gemara says, V'ramini, ad yama v'yapatish makabi Yerushalayim. We have a Mishnah in Meiser Sheni that says that until the days of Yechon and Kain Gadol, when it would be Cholamayit, you would hear the hammer banging in Yerushalayim, and he made a decree that they have to stop. But you would always hear pounding, banging on Cholamayit. Now, ad yamavin mikan ve'elach lai, only until Yechon and Kain Gadol. Now we have a Mishnah, our Mishnah, that says you're allowed to fix the locks and everything. That means obviously you're using a hammer and you're allowed to. It says like kasha, there's no question. Kamba denafri, kamba denagri. What he forbade was a blacksmith. They pound away at the metal and it's such noise. But Nagri is a carpenter. That's different. That doesn't make the same amount of noise. Maskefler of Chizda has a question. Yoimru, they're going to say color rabba aser color zutashari. They're going to say loud noises is aser and soft noises is mutter. It's like where do you draw the line? It says El Amar of Chizda kasha kambe magli habachatzini. It's actually what you're allowed to use was a sickle, but a chisel you weren't allowed to use.
So it's all about noise pollution, not about the work itself.
That's what it's according to Rav Chizda.
So if we have like the carpenter today, use these saws and make a lot of noise, that would be prohibited.
According to Rav Chizda.
Nice.
Rav Papa always comes up with an answer that resolves everything. It says, Kan kaidim gezerah, kan lachi gezerah. What's the kasha? The whole question was, there was a decree that says you weren't allowed to do this. So what? So our Mishnah is talking about before the decree. It says you are allowed. Rav Ashi Amar Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Yaisi. Rav Ashi says it's a machlekes. You have the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, you have the opinion of Rabbi Yaisi. Now, that's going to come up in the next parak, that Rabbi Yaisi is more lenient. Amar Ravina says, I'm sorry, I skipped something. The Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Abdimi man tana shana b'mayed b'davar avid shina b'mayed b'davar avid like Rabbi Yaisi. Whoever says that if there's a loss, you still need to make a shina, you have to do it in an abnormal manner, that doesn't fit with Rabbi Yaisi. Rabbi Yaisi holds that you don't need to do a shina if there's a loss. Amar Ravina kaman madlina neidna kviyusa dedasha b'chela d'mayda. According to whom do we bang the nails back in on the door frame? If the door frame is coming out on Cholamayit, who holds that we can do that? That's Rabbi Yaisi. We're relying on Rabbi Yaisi that allows us to fix the door frame. Kvashim sheyachal lachlam b'mayit kaifshan. Pickles that you can eat on Chol Moed. Pickles that you can eat on, you'll be able to eat them on Moed. You're allowed to make the pickles. Okay. Mar says, Bedisa, which is the name of a river. Bedisa Liboy Kavri. Or Bate Kavri. This river, for this place, Liboy is, Rabbi Gershon says the name of a place, for the fish. Something's missing here. The way Rabbi Gershon has it is that this river overflowed and there was fish everywhere. On the also Kuli Alma, everyone came, Sud. They set up nets. I don't know why they need to set up nets but Isu Kavra, they brought the fish. And Sharlu Rava Mimlach Minai, Rava allowed them to salt the fish. They had loads of fish. And what are they going to do with all this fish? They didn't have freezers. They didn't have freezers in Babylonia. What would they do? They would salt them, very heavily salted. And then when they would want to eat it again, they would wash the salt off. So Amalei Abaya says to Rava, you're not allowed to do that. You're only allowed to make pickles if you're going to be, or to pickle food, if you're going to be able to eat it on Chol Moed. Amalei kiven de mikara daita de achila aisinu. Since you're taking them to eat, vishavaklu, they're going now to get them to eat. Now they have so much extra. Ishavaklu, they're going to leave it pasti. It's going to go bad. So it's like the business, the commerce, where there's going to be a big loss, it would be allowed. Ikadamri, there are others that say, Sharlu Rava allowed Meizel Umeitza to go and to catch, Aisuye to bring them, Mimlach, and to salt them. Amalei Abaya said, Vanan Kvashim Shiachal Echlami Am Kaivshim Tanan. You're only allowed to do this if you're going to be eating them. Amalei, so Rava responded, Haninami misachli agav, it's these could also be eaten if you're going to press the salt out. Ki had Shmuel, because we have a case where Shmuel Avdul shitin itzzi va'achal. He pressed the salt out 60 times and he was able to eat it, and like immediately. That's the thing, that the salt would dry, and then when you would wash it off, they would actually wash it off, I think, in warm water. But here he was going to eat it right away. So how do you eat it right away? You have to wash it and press it 60 times to get the salt out. Rava ikla lebei reish galusa. Rava's in the house of the reish galusa. Abdile shitin itzivachal. They actually had this fish for him, and it wasn't ready. They had to press it 60 times, but he was able to eat it. Rav ikla lebei Rav Shapir. Rav was in the house of Rav Shapiro. Aisile kamayo hu kavra tilsa. They brought to him this fish that was tilsa bishula, was 1/3 cooked. Tilsa milcha, 1/3 was salted. The tilsa tavia, 1/3 was roasted. That's very interesting. It's like cooked herring. Yeah. Usually when you heat it up after it's been in a brine, it doesn't taste good. Can't really heat up after it's been in the brine. Amar Rav says, Amali Ada Tzaida. Rav says that Ada, the fisherman probably, told me, Kavra Samach Lemisruche Mali. The fish, right before it goes bad, that's the best. Taisus over here says, nowadays we consider it a sakana to eat it right before it goes bad. Yeah, Taisus comments on that then. Don't try this at home. Amar Rav says, Amali Ada Tzaida. Rav says that Ada, the fisherman, tells me, Kavra Tavia Ba'achva. a fish should be roasted with its brother. Who's its brother? Salt. Asuke. What's asuke? It's placed ba'avua, in its father. Who's its father? Is water. Michle, it's eaten bebrei, with its son, with the brine. That's what comes out of the fish. And ashti alei avua, and you drink together with it, its father. You drink water with fish. Taisus over here mentions Taisus says that it must be that what it says in the Shas is different than today. Today it's not good to drink water with fish. That's what Taisus says. Yeah, I actually learned this first from my mother. My mother told me this, Taisus.
She's listening right now.
Said she asked Rabbi Belsky, where does it say this? Remember this? No, she's on.
She's done.
But he said, Moed Kattan Daf Yud Aleph. Is that true?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So this is this Taisus, yeah.
Wow.
Always, sir. Always.
Yeah, so that's this piece.
You mean right now?
Yeah, by the way, they said Rabbi Belsky knew every Taisus. He knew every Taisus in Shas. That's what he said.
That's nice.
He was the Rosh Hashiva in Tervadas, but he was also like the rabbi for the OU together. The OU had a few rabbis, Rabbi Schechter and Rabbi Belsky. Yeah, he was more than just Taisus. He was an incredible person. He spoke Latin and Greek, and it was really incredible. Like he knew like all the sciences and yeah. Okay, he has a daughter here. Rabbi Gross's wife is his daughter.
Harvard.
She did. So
It's a Rabbi Gross in Miami Beach.
in Miami Beach, not the Rebbe, the Rosh Kollel.
That's cool. That's my brother's person.
Oh yeah, in Boston. He lived in Boston. Okay, so V'amar Rav, Amali Abatzaida, Rav says that the fisherman told me, Ada the fisherman, Kavra Tachli v'chalba. Kavra is fish. Tachli is either cress or a type of dates. V'chalba is milk. Litin gufa v'le litin purya. You should take a walk after you eat it, but you shouldn't go to sleep. You shouldn't lay down. He says that after you eat these, the fish, the dates, or possibly dates or cress or milk, you should drink water, not beer. In Shichra v'leichama, if you don't have water, then beer is better than wine. You shouldn't have wine. Okay. Only other pshat Teisus says that it's possible that maybe the fish is not really all fish. So we say that we shouldn't drink water with fish, but Teisus says that maybe it could still fit with the Gemara because the Gemara is talking about kavra, which is only a certain type of fish. And that one you're not allowed, but maybe other fish is allowed. That would be another pshat here in Teisus. Okay, let's leave the next parak. Reb Daniel, you'll continue from there tomorrow. All right?
Yeah, sounds good, Hashem. Thank
Okay.
you.
So hungry.
Shekayach.
Fish, pickles.
Yeah.